Hello, dear listeners. My name is Dove Marcus. This is the Healthcare Raw podcast, and I am honored to have a great guest on my show. He is a man with a story, just like the rest of us. We all have our stories. His name is Chris Michael, and he is a stroke survivor. So I reached out to Chris. He's part of a pretty large Facebook group, and that's how we met. Stroke survivors. Is that what it is, Chris?
Yeah, stroke survivors.
Stroke survivors. And I said, hey, Chris, would you like to tell your story? Absolutely. So, Chris, why don't we get started? Tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about what was going on before the stroke, or tell us about yourself.
Well, I'm 40. How old am I now? I'm 44. I was 43 when I had a stroke. Before that, I worked full-time as a patrol officer in law enforcement in Wisconsin. And, I've got 2 kids, and that's about it. Work and taking care of family, that's what I did. Single parent, and trying to do the best I can.
So, well, thank you very much for your service in law enforcement. That's very, I always take any opportunity to thank people who are willing to put their lives on the line for strangers. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
So you were working. Everything is fine. You've got your family. What happened? Mine is, I don't know if it's a weird story or not, but the way it happened for me was that my stroke was caused by a dissection, vertebral artery dissection in my neck. They're not sure what caused that. But what had happened is about 4 weeks before my stroke, I started having bad headaches. Actually, I woke up one day with a slight pain in my neck up at the base of my skull, and I just thought I slept wrong. But then it was further up in my head, and the way I described it to people is I described it as it felt like when you get a muscle spasm, but it was in my it was extremely painful. And I'm sorry, I missed that. It was in your what?
It was in my head, in the top of my head. It felt like when you get muscle spasms, but it was in the top of my head, which was extremely painful. I went to an emergency room. I went to an urgent care. I went to my doctor. Everybody thought it was a nerve condition, some kind of neuralgia. But 4 weeks later, I started having little tingling in 3 of my fingers on my left hand, and I just kind of wrote it off as a nerve, a pinched nerve, or some kind of issue. And then I started getting the same kind of pain on the opposite side of my head, on the left side, and so then I didn't really notice any balance issues or anything. It was just I was really focused on the pain that was in my head at the time. And seeing a neurologist, they always schedule you months out, at least around here. And so the day before the stroke, I was in a lot of pain. It was a sharper pain that I was having. And as I was sitting outside because it was a nice day, and it felt like my leg was falling, like when your foot falls asleep or something like that. It felt like my leg was kind of falling asleep, but I wasn't sitting funny or anything, and I was walking fine. And I just figured that's kind of weird. The hospital had said if you have anything like that, maybe you just want to come back and get looked at. And so I decided I was going to go get looked at. I noticed that I started having the same sensation in my abdomen. And I actually walked in on my own power into the hospital, explained everything to them. And they kind of rushed me in. And then I didn't come out for a couple of weeks.
Wow.
They told me I was having a stroke, and I was surprised that that's what they were saying, because I figured it was just I was going to walk in and they were going to figure out the problem. I was going to walk out and everything would be fine. But Yeah, I was there for 2 weeks.
Wow, 2 weeks. And just like that, your life changed.
Yes.
Wow. So, when we were chatting a little bit before this recording, and you said, well, I don't know if my story is dramatic enough. I didn't fit the FAST acronym. And for our listeners who don't know what that is, there are the classic symptoms of a stroke. The acronym is FAST, F-A-S-T, facial drooping, arm weakness, speech difficulty, and then the T is time to call 911. Well, Chris, it doesn't sound like you fit any of those except for maybe the arm weakness, but not really. You had nerve tingling and just you had weird symptoms. So I said, you know what? That's a pretty interesting story, and I think that other people should hear it. So you are unique. It's a unique story. And first of all, I'm glad that you're with us. It's really awesome. Do you have any residual signs? Is there anything that's still sticking around?
I still have my left leg is still affected, and my from my abdomen to my back on my left side, my affected side. For me, I think my stroke was more sensation loss. I think I lost a little strength, but not enough to notice. Mine was more of, I can't feel my leg anymore, so I don't know where it is, and which makes it really hard to walk when you don't know where your leg is at the time. Yeah.
So you had to go. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
So you had to go through physical therapy and occupational therapy and things like that? Yes.
I get around pretty good, but the way I describe it to people is I still have you don't really know how to describe what you feel when you have these effects of strokes, because you don't know how to get a good description of the feeling across, but it feels like when the muscles are tight, or sometimes I describe it as it feels like I have an extra weight attached to my leg, so to where my leg feels heavier than the other one. But I can get around pretty good.
Are you able to chase after bad guys?
No, I'm not able to do that. I was my job was accommodating, and I'm what's called limited duty capacity now, so I'm just kind of in an office. So they've been good in that respect. Plain clothes and working in the office while they see how well I heal. Because I guess I'm kind of stubborn like that, and everybody always says, most healing comes in a year, healing comes 1 to 2 years, but I think that you can, as long as you keep pushing and you don't give up, I think you can make progress. At least I'm going to think that I can keep making progress until I'm just not here anymore. My doctor said, "Do you want me to make this permanent?" And I said, "Not." Not at all. I said, "I'm not going to say anything's permanent. Nothing's going to be permanent. I'm going to keep trying and keep fighting."
So you're a not give up kind of person, I take it.
Yes.
Fantastic. So let's focus on fellow patients. Okay, there are a lot of people out there who suffer from various illnesses. Particularly, we could talk to people who have suffered from a stroke or a heart attack. Someone who is doing something one day and all of a sudden is not able to do what they were doing before. How can you encourage that person? Now, before you answer, okay, there are various degrees of recovery and suffering from illnesses and strokes. There's many different levels. Can you offer any encouragement to someone who may just feel like, oh crap, my whole life has changed, I can't do what I was doing? What can you tell that person?
Um, I guess it's the way I've always looked at life. I have had quite a few life challenges, let's say, before the stroke. When something like that happens, what the first thing that came to my mind is, I think that broke me down. 13 years ago, I became a widower, and I went through divorce before my stroke and things like that. Everybody goes through life things, but for me, I kept getting up and dusting myself off. But when the stroke happened, I think that hurts a little deeper because it's your own body that's failing you. We don't really think about it, but in the grand scheme of things, the one thing that doesn't let us down is our bodies. And so then when we come down with the illness, we don't really know how to, or stroke, whatever the illness is, strokes, it could be diabetes, could be anything. When our body's just not working right, it hurt. It's more, it felt a little more personal to me.
Mm-hmm.
And, but then I tried to look at, as rough as it was, I tried to look at the positive things that I could take from it. I was working a lot, not spending a lot of time at home because I was always working. So I didn't have a lot of time with the kids. And, maybe it's not maybe it's not the physical capacity I had before, but it made me slow down a little bit, and it made me try and enjoy maybe what I wasn't enjoying before. It's a challenge and it's tough, but thinking about a stroke and how many people don't survive strokes, and some people are affected a lot worse than I was. Honestly, I was just happy that I survived. There's a reason that I survived, and whether I know that reason or not, there's a reason. I don't know if one of the things I said is maybe it's to go back later and commune with other stroke survivors that maybe are struggling, and to say, hey, I know it. For lack of better terms, I know it sucks, but you got to keep pushing forward. You have to. I mean, you're going to want to give up, and you're going to not want to do it, but you just got to keep pushing because, that's the lesson to learn. And maybe for me, it was to not work so many hours and to slow down and to enjoy time with my kids. And honestly, when I came home, when I was out of the hospital and it was a nice day, I said, wow, I'm glad I'm here to enjoy this, 75-degree sunny day, because I could not be here right now. And that was my outlook when I came out of the hospital. I could not be here right now. I'm enjoying this. I'm enjoying that. I could not be doing this with the kids. Whatever it may be. It's a challenge, but we have to try and hold on to those positive things that we have, and not focus on what we don't have, because there's always somebody that's going to be worse than us, worse off than us. That's just the way I feel. I've got more than some, I've got less than some, but there's always people struggling more than I am. It's important to just be grateful for what we have, and be grateful we're still here and that we can still see our family. And that's my philosophy, I guess.
Well said, my dear friend. Thank you so much for sharing that. So let's talk a little bit. Now, this is kind of like shifting it, okay? So let's go back to when you were in the hospital. And, so my background is that I'm a registered nurse, and I worked as a chaplain for a bit before I became a nurse. And before that, I became a rabbi. So I like to think of things in like the bigger perspective, okay? Let's talk a little bit about when you were in the hospital. You mentioned that you were there for a couple weeks. Are there parts of that experience that stand out? In particular, any of the staff, do you remember, was it a good experience or a bad experience? How would you rate that? Or do you think about it still? Or tell me a little bit about that.
Sometimes I try not to think about it, but I still remember it. It was honestly my first hospitalization. I've never been through even a day, even overnight in the hospital. So it was a new experience. I spent, I would have to say overall it was a positive experience, but a little mixed. Maybe my neurologist wasn't quite as personable as I would have liked. I have a new neurologist now who's very helpful and answers all my numerous questions. I'm a question asker. I ask more questions than anybody, I think, sometimes. But the nursing staff I think that I had was exceptional, and the inpatient physical therapy staff, they were maybe they're not used to people with my motivation. I don't know. They would always ask me, well, what would you like to do? And I would say, it doesn't matter. Let's whatever you think, or you want to try this? Sure, we'll try that. I even remember I think two of my nurses' names, and this was probably 10 months ago. In intensive care, it was Josh. I remember being him having me roll over, and I couldn't feel my legs. So when I went to roll over off of a different table, I couldn't stop, and I wound up slapping him in the chest, which was, and he just blew it off. But then there was another nurse named Marty that was on the inpatient floor, and I'm kind of a jokester, and she could give it right back to me. So that was nice. She had a good bedside manner. But I think one that stands out, and this is going to sound bad because I don't remember her name, but my first physical therapist, she asked me a question. She said, "What do you want?" And they had me trying to get around in a walker, and what I told her was, I said, "What I want is not to be in this walker. That's what I want." And she didn't say anything for a minute, and she looked at me, and she grabbed one of the canes off the wall, and she said, "Here, let me see how you can do with this." And so I walked around with it, and she said, "Okay, from now on, you're not allowed to bring your walker to physical therapy." And this was the first day. And for me, whether it was going to be easy or difficult, I appreciated that, because I said, "I don't want this." And she said, "Fine, then, don't use it," and she didn't let me use it from then. So
she listened to you, right? She listened to you?
Correct. I think that's what I felt overall, is that overall my staff listened to what my concerns were and what I wanted. And, other than maybe I didn't want to be in the hospital for 2 weeks, but, that's a little beyond any of our controls, I suppose.
Excellent. Wow. What an experience. I think that I've dealt with thousands of patients at this point in my career that I worked in a hospital, I work in home care, literally thousands of people, Chris. Okay? Thousands of people. And I still try to look at each person as having their own story. And I really found this with home care, is going into people's houses. So like when you're in the hospital, you can be a number, but when you arrive at home, and from my perspective, like I'm entering your world. So that's one of the reasons I'm kind of like excited to be having this conversation with you, because it's like you just exposed me and our listeners to your world, to your experience, and to be able to see you. I'm looking at you, but we're just going to release the audio on the podcast, but it's really amazing to be part of your story. So first of all, thank you very much for sharing all of this. It's very brave of you, and you're brave not just as a police officer, but as a compassionate, caring person who is willing to share his story. So thank you for that, my dear friend.
Well, thank you for allowing me to share. I appreciate it.
Awesome. All right. Well, is there anything else that you might want to throw in there? Maybe a shout out to, I don't know, whatever. It's all good, baby. It's one of my mottos. It's all good.
Oh, I don't know if there's anybody specific, I guess, but just, I just appreciate everybody that's had me in their thoughts and been there through this. Like I said, it was the biggest challenge for me because it felt so personal. But I guess most importantly, anybody that's struggling out there that feels like they want to give up, that's my motto. Is just never give up. I started doing a workout program, and that's one of the mottos, is never give up. And I bought a shirt that says never give up, and days are going to get tough and you're going to not want to do it, but you know what? Just don't quit, because when you give up, that's when you're done. Just don't quit. It's your mind will give up a lot faster than your body does, So just keep pushing. Even if you don't think there's going to be improvements, you can still make improvements.
All right, Chris, thank you so much for joining us on the Healthcare Raw podcast. I look forward to keeping you in my prayers, and I'll see you on the World Wide Web.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it.
Have a great day and enjoy the 78-degree weather and the sunny day.
Yeah, today I think it's going to get up to the 80s, but it's still nice out. It's not too hot.
So summer has officially arrived, huh?
Correct. Yes.
Enjoy your summer, Chris. Have a beautiful day.
All right, you too. Thank you very much.